Carrie Chapman Catt and Her Effect on Women's Suffrage. A documentary by Lili-Hwa. Why didn't women have the right to vote? Women were not given the right to vote in the Declaration of Independence because women were thought of as caretakers and inferior to men. Many argued that in the Declaration of Independence, when they stated that all men were created equal, that included women too. Another reason why women weren't allowed to vote is because men thought of women as childlike and incapable of having the responsibility of voting. Politics were also considered as unladylike at the time. Women didn't openly start talking about getting the right to vote and politics until the late 1800s. This is when many famous suffrage events took place and when many famous suffragists became active. This includes Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Alice Paul, and the Seneca Falls Convention. Many more of these events would happen and many more suffragists would become active in the early 1900s. When did women start speaking up for their rights? Seneca Falls Convention was the first women's rights convention. It focused on the social, civil, and religious conditions and rights of women. This convention spanned over 2 days, July 19th and 20th of 1848. The convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, and that's where the convention gets its name from. At this convention, a document called the Declaration of Sentiments was written. Although the document was written by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, it was signed by 68 women and 32 men. This means that 100 attendees out of the 300 signed the document. The document itself outlined the rights that American women should be entitled to as citizens. It talked about the lack of women's suffrage, participation, and representation in the U.S. government. The Seneca Falls Convention marked a start in women's rights. Women who wanted the right to vote were called suffragettes. This consisted of Madeline Breckinridge, Matilda Joslyn Gage, Anna Howard Shaw, and Carrie Chapman Catt herself. These women and many others would give lectures or speeches, go on protests, or even hunger strikes to show that they wanted the right to vote. Although they weren't striking, which is illegal, and were protesting, some women would even protest at the White House, which is illegal, and were arrested in the process. When did the government start paying attention to women's suffrage? In the early 1900s, the government started noticing how big of an event women's suffrage was. Women's suffrage organizations such as the NAWSA, National American Women's Suffrage Association, sent in petitions or documents claiming their suffrage. Although many of these were sent in, only a few were read by the actual government. What was Carrie Chapman Catt's effect on women's suffrage? Carrie Chapman Catt was a women's suffrage leader during the early 1900s. She joined the NAWSA in 1900 and became the president of the NAWSA in 1904. She believed that we should get a law passed in every state of America that allowed women to vote. After Iowa denied to pass the law, Carrie Catt Chapman came up with a new plan that would end up being the so-called winning plan. This plan was to get a constitutional amendment that said that all women in the United States were allowed to vote. The 19th Amendment had gone through all of the states except for Tennessee, which was the last state to ratify the 19th Amendment. The decision was very close in Tennessee because of one man who got a letter from his mother saying how much he loved the right to vote and changed his mind. After Tennessee had ratified the 19th Amendment, it was officially part of the Constitution. I am inspired by any woman who decided to partake in the event to fight for their rights. Although the government didn't listen to them for many years, they kept fighting and never gave up. Did the president agree with women's suffrage? The president at the time of women's suffrage, Woodrow Wilson, agreed greatly with the fact that women deserved the right to vote, although he waited a while before acknowledging it. Woodrow Wilson did end up ratifying the 19th Amendment in 1920. When the 19th Amendment was passed, the news was everywhere. Women all over the U.S. were celebrating the fact that they now had the same rights as men. Thanks to Carrie Catt Chapman and other amazing suffragists and suffragettes, I am now able to say that when I am an adult, I will be able to have the right to vote. The women's suffrage movement inspired many other movements also, as in the African American rights movement, and LGBTQ parades and acceptance. This amendment still matters today because if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have many of our women leaders that we have today, as of those in the government, education system, and other important jobs. Now women all across the world are allowed to vote, and America is proud to be one of those countries. Thank you for watching my documentary.